Setting colors in CSS is one thing. However, there's a whole world of color theory for you to explore. You can set colors in CSS with just one simple word like green. You can set color as a hex code, which is a series of numbers and letters that starts with a pound sign, or you can set it as an RGB value. Let's explore color theory in code. Take a look at this HTML document that I've set up in CodePen. We have 4 different headings, each one with a different ID attribute. So one of these has the ID of hex, another an ID RGB, color name, and HSL. Now the text for each of them is different, meaning in this heading we see the text color via hex code, and then what is apparently a hex code. So let's dive right into hex codes first. Hex codes are a 6-digit series of numbers and letters that represent a color. It's really hard to tell just by looking at this hex code, #1BDA76, which color this actually is, but there are a lot of tools online that will allow you to look at a particular hex code and see the associated color, such as this website, which is Color Picker, and you have this whole set of colors that you can look at and immediately see the hex code for. For example, if I want a nice red, I can get a red and get 81241D as the hex code, always prefaced by a pound sign. To set color with a hex code, therefore, we would need to select the appropriate element, as we always do in CSS, the ID of hex in this case, and set its color property to a value of the hex code, which I'll just grab here, copy, paste, end it with a semicolon, and you can see the heading changes its color to a nice green. That green is the hex code 1BDA76. Now for every hex code or color, you also have an RGB value that is a combination of red, green, and blue colors that make up the color itself. For example, if I take my hex code and I go onto this Color Picker website and type it in here, hit enter, you'll see I have a set of values that appear, RGB 27, 218, and 118. I've already filled out these values here as an RGB value. So to set color via RGB value, you'll get the same result as you would using a hex code. They're both very precise in terms of color, but the syntax is different. Go ahead and select the element RGB, as an ID of RGB, you can see it up here, and set its color property to a value of an RGB value this time, not a hex code. So we don't need that pound sign. We would just type RGB always, plus the numbers that make up the red, green, and blue values of the color. You can see we get pretty much the same green here, right? But if I change one of these numbers even just a little bit, the color itself will change ever so slightly. Let's make a more dramatic change, say making this 200, and you can see that my color becomes more blue because I've increased the value of blue in this value. Change it back to the way it was, which was 118. Now let's move on to setting color via color name. This is by far the least precise way to do things. If I select the element that has the ID color name, and I set its value to light green. The text does become light green, but it's really hard to match up predefined color names in CSS with the precision of an RGB or hex code value. You can find lists of these predefined CSS names online, like here on CSS Tricks, for example. Now there's one other really precise way to set color, unlike via color name, which is an HSL value. HSL stands for hue, saturation, and lightness. You'll notice that in the Color Picker tool, it also gives me HSL values. I've already pre-filled those values here in this HSL value, and I can just copy and paste this line. You'll notice that these are sent as percentages here, these last 2 values. Choose HSL, the element with the ID of HSL, and set its color to HSL 149, 88%, and 48%. Again, I just grabbed these numbers from the Color Picker. I could not have possibly known them myself.